Hey there guys, we've got another D500 trial on the JP server. It's against Kilma, I think Tato, and Omega. This one is pretty challenging, mostly because I don't have Vaughn, and Vaughn is such a big deal for this fight. So the missions, I want to do all missions. 25 turns or less is actually not that hard. This team could very easily do 25 turns or less, but 20 turns is pretty tricky. So Omega's the third fight, the first two are humans. We're going to take a custom-built Vaughn friend, and shout out to all the people that built for me. This guy's name is in Japanese. I don't know which of the friends it is, so I can't give him credit, but a couple people built me a nice Vaughn. So here's the party we're going to use. We're going to have Diosius as the party leader, because he's going to buff Cecil's base form as well. And don't laugh, we are going to squeeze every speck of damage possible, including base form Cecil. So let's give it a go, and if this works, I'll have a turn chart in the comments. You can follow along step by step if you want to try to do the same clear. But yeah, this is a tricky fight. So we're going to start Cecil on the base form for the Red Wings field. Then we're going to shift him, but we're not going to use him yet. So we're going to turn one, use Vaughn's LB. That's going to be a big fire in peril, a big break, as well as an AoE human killer buff, which is why he's such a big deal. We're going to use the new Fina. I'm not sure what her name is. I'm just going to call her new Fina. We're going to use LB buff. We're going to use a status immunity buff, because this girl does tons of statuses. And we're going to use an LB fill to get Vaughn back up. We're going to LB the free Reagan. We're going to start Diosius in the base form to give him an auto amplify, and then shift him and use his LB. And then we're going to use the new Rain to AoE imbue fire and then double absolute mirror of equity. And we're going to click Rain first. Use Cecil last. So here we go. And get a little bit of damage on turn one. Not the biggest damage, but we're going to get there. Now this boss, you need Mirage kind of every turn, or a lot of bulk. You can bulk up and survive it, but this party needs Mirage. We couldn't fit it on turn one, so we're going to use Cecil to Omni cover. So we're going to Shelga, we're going to regular cover, and then we're going to Omni cover to handle both the magic and the physical damage on turn one. The boss will also do status effects, but we're not really worried about that. And at the end of her turn, she's going to give herself a 4-stack Mirage. By the way, the Vaughn friend is provoking for us with evasion. So there's a 4-stack Mirage on the boss. So Cecil is going to go ahead and do a triple, just physical attack to get rid of 3 stacks of Mirage. Vaughn is now going to give us Mirage because we need that. We're going to use the 160 Imperil, and then he's going to attack for the last stack of Mirage. Okay, Mirage is all gone. New Fina is now going to triple cast her LB fill skill. That's going to top up our DPS unit so they can LB yet again. And then Rain is just going to triple absolute mirror of equity. And we're going to deal some damage on this turn. Alright. Now, this turn, the boss is going to again do AoE physical as well as AoE magic, status effects. And then she's going to dispel our party. Our party is now completely dispelled, and she has buffed herself by a large amount. So we're going to go to the base form with Cecil, and we're going to just toss a Holy Torch, items are allowed, to completely dispel the boss. Now we're going to use Vaughn to LB again to reapply breaks. Hold on one second. To reapply breaks, as well as Human Killer again. Remember, we got completely dispelled. So because we got dispelled, we're going to use Rain to rebuff us. He is not shifting yet, he's staying in the base form for now. So we're going to go ahead and use Fire Imbue on the party. We're going to stat buff the party, and the last attack doesn't really matter. Just use something cheap to save mana. Now we're going to go ahead and use Reagan's SLB with Diosius, and we're going to use the LB of Fina for a little bit of bonus damage. Now, Fina's LB is Bolting Strike. The other two are Absolute Mirror of Equity. They don't properly work together entirely, so we're going to send Fina first and basically just cap the last hit of her LB, which is slightly backloaded. So we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, and that's just a little bit of bonus damage. Honestly, most of the damage comes from Reagan and Diosius. Fina just chipped in. She actually broke the chain. Big sad face. It didn't matter. The goal is to kill Kilma on 3 turns. You got to do it in 3 turns for the way I'm personally doing this clear. There are other strategies, but because most of these units are trance shift, it's a big headache. All right. So Tato uses a bunch of magic as well as an AoE fixed counterattack. The counterattack is relatively painful, and it's fixed damage, so it ignores cover, but it doesn't ignore Omni cover. It does a lot of damage, so you need bulk to survive it. But we're now going to use Vaughn to SLB on this turn. We're going to use the new Fina to imbue the party with fire. That also amplifies fire, by the way. We're going to use her stat LB buff, and we're going to do an LB fill to help get Vaughn's LB refilled. Notice how Cecil, by the way, started the fight in the base form. We shifted him before killing the last fight. You got to start the fight in the base form to get this LB field from the Red Wings. So if you forgot to shift him before the fight was over last round, start over because you messed up. You need that LB field. So we're going to hold off on Cecil. We're going to now LB Reagan. We're going to LB Diosius, and we're going to shift our EX1 Rain, and he's the reason this is so challenging, freaking EX1. And we're going to use this shifted LB. So we're going to go ahead and deal some damage right here. All of these are absolute mirror of equity chaining. A little bit of damage on turn one, not bad. Now we're going to use Cecil to... Remember, he is not provoking. We do not want to provoke with him because the boss is going to do a big single target in peril, which our friend is going to provoke and take. So we're just going to Shelga, we're going to cover, and we're going to Omni cover. Now, not only is this Omni cover going to block the counterattack, because it can cover the counterattack, it's fixed damage. It ignores regular cover, but not Omni cover. And we don't have good mitigation yet. And the counterattack would deal a ton of damage. But also, his Omni cover fills LB gauge, as you can see. So there's the counterattack. It obviously does nothing to Cecil, but it would really hurt our party. Here's the single target stuff, but Cecil is covering it. Covering the magic, no problem. Now, every second turn, the boss does Dispel on your party. This Dispel can be Nethersighted, but he does it after his regular magic, which can also be Nethersighted, meaning you need multiple stacks of Nethersight to stop the Dispel. And you could just rebuff afterwards. I don't want to do that. So what we're going to do, we're going to use Diosius's base form, which is wearing Nethersight, to Nethersight the first stack. That's going to Nethersight the Flare. Then we're going to use the friend Vaughn, who is wearing Ash's STMR, to Nethersight the second spell. On round 2, the second spell is Dispelga. Now we're not going to be dispelled. We're going to use Cecil to use his Limit Burst here. That's going to put up good mitigation, because we don't have Omni cover anymore. But now that Cecil's LB is active, his mitigation will allow us to basically take almost no damage from the counterattack. We're going to use Fina to just triple refill LB gauge, which allows us to do another LB on Reagan and then another LB on Rain. So go ahead and deal a little bit of damage here. Okay, now the first spell, there's the counterattack. With Cecil's mitigations, we're okay. So here is the Flare, Nethersighted. There's the Dispel, Nethersighted. Turn 2 is pretty easy. You only need a 2-stack Nethersight. You're going to need more later. But he only dispels on even turns. Odd turns are fine. Okay, so now we're going to use Cecil to refresh his cover, refresh his Shelga, and we're going to do a break on the boss, because Vaughn's regular LB, which we're going to do here, does not break attack and magic, only defense and spirit. So we're going to go ahead and use Vaughn's regular LB here. We're going to wait on Fina. We're going to use the SLB of Reagan. We're going to triple Absolute Mirror of Equity our Diosius, and we're going to use Rain to double Absolute Mirror of Equity, and then his cooldown, which fills his LB gauge. So go ahead and chain this up. Okay, now we're going to triple fill LB gauge of Fina. That also refills mana, which is very helpful because like Diosius and Rain use a ton of mana. There's the counterattack with Cecil's mitigations, no problem. Cecil is still covering. We covered all the dispels, so we're good. Now this turn, you need 3 stacks of Nethersight to stop all the dispels, because he's going to do Flare, Darkga, and then Dispel. So we're going to Nethersight with Cecil, who is also wearing a copy, Nethersight with Diosius, and we're going to use Vaughn to Nethersight again. That's 3 stacks of Nethersight, so now we're not going to be having any problems. So we're also going to LB Rain again, and Reagan. Now, if your Rain is really powerful, we don't want to kill the boss yet, because Rain is a trance shift, and we need to like let the trance shift come off cooldown, so to speak, for the final fight. So if you're, for example, killing Tonto on turn 4, just deal less damage. You know, break your chain intentionally, don't use the LB at all, or whatever. I'm not going to kill him, so we're going to go ahead and just deal some damage here, and he'll probably get to around 5%. I'm doing about 20%. Perfect. Yeah, just from experience, I'm doing about, 17 to 20 to 22%, so that shouldn't have killed him. Anyway, now we're just going to refill LB gauge again, which heals mana, etc. And of course, this is going to, counterattack. We still got Cecil's mitigations, no big deal. So Dispel, or Nethicite, and the third one, Nethicite, we never lost our buffs. All right, good to go. All right, so we want to use Vaughn's SLB this turn, again, so that it gets refreshed for the next fight. We're going to just refill LB gauge with Fina a few times. We can now do Cecil's LB again to put up that mitigation. And the rest of the party, now here, if the boss is not close to dead, then, chain on him a little bit, just don't kill him. We don't want to kill him yet. Because the boss is, almost dead, we're good at this point. We're just going to guard. That's going to lose stacks and all that. We don't care. Reagan's going to finish off the boss in a moment. All right, so here's some stuff. There's no dispels on odd turns. You're good there. All right, turn 6 is only a double dispel, so we don't really need to worry too much about that. So we're going to go ahead and have Cecil just Nethicite, and we'll have Vaughn Nethicite again. We can just, fill LB gauge, which also heals the party, etc. And we can guard these guys again. We don't really need to do anything. We're going to kill the boss on turn 7. Yeah, we're intentionally waiting till turn 7 to kill the boss. So we've done 3 turns on fight 1, 7 turns on fight 2, and we're going to have 7 turns on fight 3 for a 17 turn clear. So now it's time to kill the boss. So what we're going to do, put Cecil back in the base form. Got to be in the base form so you have that field up for the next encounter. If you start in the shift form, you won't get the Red Wings field. So now we're going to just use Rain to triple Absolute Mirror of Equity. We'll just use Geosius. Don't shift them. Triple Absolute Mirror of Equity. And then Reagan's LB or SLB will finish it off. We are going to use that. Vaughn will Rally and Cry. And Fina will, before we deal damage, Fina is going to imbue the party with fire. We're going to, this is overkill. The boss is very close to dead. But in case you weren't, you had to rely on some burst. And then we're going to LB buff, and we're going to LB fill. We'll just go ahead and do all this. We'll go ahead and chain it up, and then we'll just use this, whatever. And there it is. Tato is dead on turn 7. Now we go into the final fight, and the final fight is the one where it's a severe, severe damage check. Survival is fine. Damage, because you only have a 3-turn window to kill this guy before he starts healing back up, and Mighty Guard, etc. So turn 1, technically you can deal damage, and if you're able to deal more than 20% damage on turn 1, or more than 10% damage on turn 1, it is worth it. My party couldn't deal 10% damage on turn 1. We're not even going to bother trying. I mean, I guess, technically speaking, we could try here. We'll try it, but it's not going to happen. We're just going to guard. We're just going to guard. We're not going to deal 10% damage on turn 1. So these guys don't need to do anything. On the other hand, the rest of the party, we're going to shift Cecil. We're going to cover. We're going to Shelga. And we're going to do his resist buff. Remember that the Von Friend is passive provoking with evasion for us. Von Friend is going to do Mirage. We need Mirage in this fight. We're going to do his Magnus Break for an 85 defense and spirit, or an 85 attack and magic break. And then we're just going to do, we're just going to provoke just to override Cecil's provoke, which we're going to do in a few minutes. Now this boss does status effects, so we're going to use Fina to status immunity, and then just double LB fill. That's going to refill mana, etc. Now turn 1, the boss has no buffs. Like I said, you could burst him, but we're not really ready for a turn 1 burst, so whatever. On the boss's turn 1, he is going to gain Mighty Guard. It cannot be dispelled. You can't do anything about it. So for 3 turns, you basically can't hurt the boss. He's like nearly invulnerable. There's no point to even attacking him during Mighty Guard. So for the next 3 turns, we're just going to wait and set up. We are going to get unavoidably dispelled coming up. So don't use any big buffs yet. So on this turn, these guys can just guard. We don't really care about them right now. Vaughn can just, Mirage, provoke, refresh the provoke, and just do Mirage. We do need Mirage again. Cecil can cover Shelga. And we're going to cast his provoke because his provoke gives 75% mitigation. And because Vaughn is provoking as well, and Cecil's not wearing passive provoke, Vaughn's provoke will override Cecil's. Not that it would really matter, technically speaking. We're just going to reload Fina, just whatever. So there's some, some magic stuff, some status ailments, and some AoE physical. We're negating all of that, and Cecil's covering the damage. There's some AoE fire, but with the resist buff, we take basically no damage. We're good. So now we're going to start getting ready. We are going to get dispelled this turn. So don't do any big buffs on your party. But we're going to start off with Diosius using his base form LB for a big Dark Imperil. Then we're going to shift Scarlet Rain and do his LB. That's going to stack up. His is a stacking LB. All right. Reagan is going to do his SLB because we want his SLB to be used on turn 19, turn 3 of this boss. I don't know why I said 19. Because that's going to let it refresh and fill his LB perfectly for the last part of the fight, which you'll see when we get there. And now, 1 second, I have a mistake in my turn chart. There it is. Okay, what else are we doing? I've got my little turn chart right here. So turn 3, we're going to... Okay, we're going to Rallying Cry with Vaughn. We got to refill Diosius' LB at this point. Fina is going to just LB fill 3 times. And Cecil is going to do... we're going to do the Break. Because this imperils the boss. We need this imperil. So we're going to Break. We are going to Provoke for mitigation. And we can just heal. Yeah. And we're going to triple LB fill with our Fina. That also heals up Cecil. Okay, so the boss is going to do some attacks. At the end of the turn, the boss dispels us. This one you cannot net the sight. You can't stop it. So we lose all our buffs. Also, the countdown for a wave cannon is now up. This turn, the boss is going to wave cannon. It's a decently hard-hitting magic attack. It can be covered. Cecil covers it, no problem. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use Cecil, okay, and by the way, this is the last turn of Mighty Guard. Next turn, we get a 3-turn window to kill this boss. If you don't kill him in those 3 turns, he reapplies Mighty Guard, he starts healing, and we're not going to get the 20-turn clear. So anyway, we're going to SLB our Vaughn. There's a 160 fire and an 89 break. That said, we need Mirage this turn. So we're going to use Diosius to do his Dark Amp cooldown, his 150 Dark Amplify, and we're going to 2-stack Mirage the party. We're going to use Cecil to do cover. Remember, we got the spells. We're going to cover, we're going to Shelga, and we're going to do his LB buff cooldown. So I'm not sure what it's called, but it buffs the modifier for his LB. We are squeezing every single speck of damage out of this clear. We need immunity buff again. So we are going to immunity buff with New Fina and double LB fill. We got to refill Diosius because we're not using his fill Magnus. Reagan is going to just hit the boss 1 time. We're going to use his cooldown, and we're going to use his LB full cooldown, LB fill cooldown to make sure he's ready to go. Rain is going to use his cooldown, and if he was EX2, this is where we would 150 amplify. Mine is not EX2, which is so frustrating. I don't have it, so we can't do it. So we're just going to use AoE Fire Imbue Imperil. I'm sorry, AoE Fire Imbue, and we're going to do his... we would do his Amplify. We don't have it, so we'll just cast whatever we want. So here's the Wave Cannon, and then the boss's shield goes down. Cecil will cover the Wave Cannon, no problem. Yeah, very strong tank. And there's the boss. There's the boss activating his healing, which is obnoxious. But the Mighty Guard is down. Now it is time to burst. We are going to LB Reagan. We're going to shift Diosius, whatever, and LB him. We're going to have Rain use his LB, which is now stacked. We're going to hold off on Vaughn. We're going to use Cecil's LB, which is also Absolute Mirror of Equity Chaining frames. But before we do that, we're going to use Fina to put up an LB damage buff for 3 turns, a Machine Killer buff for 3 turns, and we're going to just do a LB fill healing thingy. We're going to wait on Vaughn. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to, make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah, we are going to chain sword. Yeah. So we're going to... Okay, so I am going to pause the video here. For one thing, if the chain breaks, I have to reset the turn. Also, I might have to rerun this for variance. And if I don't get a good variance roll on these next 3 turns of burst, I have to rerun the fight, and I don't want to do all that explanation of the early fight. So I will see you in a moment when I don't break the chain and we get a good variance roll. See you in a second. Alright guys, here we go. So we're going to chain Diosius and Cecil. Wait just a second, then we're going to chain Rain and Reagan. So here we go. And this should deal a respectable chunk of damage. It did okay. Now Vaughn is going to do Rallying Cry. Okay. There it is. Now the boss does some random attacks. We don't really care. There's Mirage from the previous turn. There's some attacks. There's this obnoxious healing. Okay. Now we are going to use LB of Reagan, LB of Diosius, and Rain will just triple Absolute Mirror of Equity. We are going to do these first, and then we're going to wait a second. So we're going to go ahead and do these guys first. So let's chain this up. Okay, now we are going to use Vaughn to Rallying Cry. We're going to use Cecil to Omni cover this turn for the physical damage. We are going to use his Magnus to fill LB, and we are going to break the boss. And Fina is going to do a double LB fill, and we're going to use her cooldown to buff her LB modifier, so we can get every speck of possible damage we can get. Alright, everybody's ready to go again. Very exciting. Okay, so now we're going to get Cecil to the base farm. We're going to do the SLB of Fina. We're going to do the triple bolting strike of the friend Vaughn. LBU, LBU, LBU. And we're going to go. So we're going to chain the back row and build the chain for a little bit. Then we're going to go to the front row. And also, Cecil will reapply the Dark Peril, which has worn off on this turn. And we need to kill the boss. And if we don't kill him, well, bad things. Here we go. Got it. Got it. Whew, what a headache of a trial. What a headache of a trial. Not having EX2 Rain, not having my own Vaughn. Annoying, to say the least. Not to mention not having EX2 Fina for her STMR. We did a 20-turn clear. We did 3, we did 7, we did 7. That is a 17-turn clear. Here is the party. OMG, I'm so glad this is over. What a headache having to rely on variance, etc. So, our Reagan is, honestly speaking, not that great for burst damage, but because he's a 3-turn SLB, and his LB and his SLB are both Absolute Mirror of Equity frames, he is amazing as a support chainer, and he can deal consistent damage. When I show you the damage report, he's going to look exceptionally high, because he did contribute a ton of damage, because he basically soloed Phase 2. Reagan did the majority of the Phase 2 damage. Rain did no damage at all in Phase 1. He never shifted. Phase 2, Rain got a few LBs off, and then in Phase 3, Rain doesn't have his Amplify. Reagan is really helpful for this. Now, he is using a Greatsword double-hand build. We're getting the Greatsword in Peril from Diosius. If you're not using Diosius, give him a double-handed sword, like, for example, not Duran. Oh, God, or Duran's sword work. What's his name? Bart's dad. Dorgan. Dorgan's sword's a good option. He does really desperately desire Titus's STMR. That's like a big deal here. Other than that, LB damage versus humans and machines, he is maxed on both. He has 6 times chain cap innately, so you're not going to worry about that. And we're using the Cog card. And he does he's really good for this fight because he's consistent. And we need consistent damage to help chip down Phase 1 and Phase 2. His burst damage, not the biggest, but it's still okay. It's okay. Diosius in the base form is using Arden's TMR for auto amplified dark because we don't have an external version. Other than that, he's got a bunch of LB fill in the base form, and he's got mana regen, and net the sight. His base form damage is irrelevant. He's a support chainer only in the base form, so don't really worry about that. Give him a little bit of bulk so he doesn't die to Tonto's counters. Shift form. He is using his own STMR. You know, LB damage versus humans and machines. Maxed LB, max human, max machine. 13,000 attack power, basically. He's also the party leader, because while he's the leader, he's buffing up Cecil, because Cecil is considered a dark unit in the base form, which probably added 5 extra damage. But he still buffs the rest of the party, because the rest of the party is all anniversary units, except Vaughn, but who cares? And anniversary units get his buff as well, even if they're not dark. Yeah, so he did really good damage. He basically solos the first fight, because the first fight we need to kill quickly, and we just LB all 3 turns. He autofills his LB. Very, very good for the first fight. That being said, he is wrong element. He's not a fire unit, meaning he's not getting buffed, or he's not getting full benefit of the fire field that is up in the party. He is getting half benefit. We are imbuing him, but anyway, he was a helpful unit here. Base form Scarlet Rain is using chaining damage versus everything. You know, we did a bunch of chaining in the base form. Human and machine maxed out. We're using Tyvus's card. There we go. I went ahead and Moogled his STMR early, which I hate doing, but I needed every speck of damage possible. Shift form, geared identical, 13,000 attack power. EX1, so we don't have as good killers, we don't have as good amplify, all that irritation. He does have... You need, I think, 7 LB per turn to guarantee he can do 3 LBs on the burst of Omega. Otherwise, if you have less than 7 per turn, you'll be relying on crystal drops, and you don't want extra RNG. So make sure he has 7 LB per turn. We're getting that from Kyrie's STMR. That way, he guaranteed what we're doing. He's guaranteed to get his LB twice in a row on the Omega fight. And yeah, he did a lot of burst damage. So the Omega fight was mostly carried by him. Even though he's EX1, he still did the majority of the Omega damage. Dark Cecil, in the base form. Start him in the base form all 3 fights. Give him his armor for the field. And gear him for LB damage versus machines. We only DPS in the base form against Omega for 1 turn. His damage is going to look absolutely atrocious, but okay. And give him a good bulk card. And there's his setup. Now, in the shift form, he has full evasion, not provoking. Do not give him any passive provoke at all. Full evasion, net the sight, and as much magic bulk as you can, and as much fire resist as you can. 150 is really all you need, to be honest here. But, you know, more is safer, quote unquote. But Tonto does a ton of fire damage. Tonto gives you a big fire in peril AoE, and more fire resist helps. Also, Omega does AoE fire as well. So 150 is plenty, though. But he has full evasion. Also, in the base form, or in the shift form, we did damage 1 time in phase 2. I can't... There it is. In we did do his LB 1 time in phase 2. He's got 200 machine killer and 150 LB damage. I squeezed out every spec possible, so yes, don't laugh. And then Return Fina, also geared for damage. Against machine, we only use her for damage on the machine fight. I don't have her STMR, so her damage is a lot weaker than it would have been otherwise. But she is maxed on LB, 250 machine killer, and she's got 9,673 spirit. There we go, spirit card, chain cap up. We're forced to use her useless TMR because I don't want to Moogle her bow. If you have her bow, get rid of this TMR and max out the machine killer. And yeah, she's really good for the support. She does machine killer for the party, tons of LB fill, status immunity, LB buff, stat buff. She's basically a support unit, but she did good burst on 1 turn. And then the friend Vaughn, a bunch of people built him for me. Because the name is in Japanese, I don't know which of the friends this is. I can't give you credit, but thank you to everyone that built me the custom Vaughn. So the Vaughn is passive provoke evasion using the Rallying Cry to help fill LB gauge in phase 3. Ash's STMR to do net the sight. We need that in phase 2. Other than that, just a lot of bulk. For my build, his damage is completely irrelevant. Status immunity is technically good, but we're using Fina, so not really critical, but it does help. And yeah, so Vaughn didn't do any damage, but he was passive provoke evasion, and he is the 160 fire in peril, 89 defense break, 88 spirit break, as well as a 160 human killer for the party. and Mirage for the party. He is so important for this fight. Not required. I've already seen videos people doing it without Vaughn, but that involves things like, you know, stronger DPS, etc. So there's an all mission clear. Here's the damage breakdown. Like I said, Reagan shows really high here because he is dealing damage every single turn, the entirety of the fight. Whereas Diosius and Rain were stuck in their basically pretty much useless base forms for most of the fight. They only shifted for the burst turns. Like Diosius bursted down Kilma and bursted on Omega. Diosius did nothing on Tonto. Rain got a few LBs versus Tonto, but mostly he was just support chaining against Tonto. He did nothing against Kilma. And then on Omega, Rain carried Omega. Fina only bursted one time against Omega, and she added 1.2 billion. That mattered. Every spec mattered. And Cecil, I mean, we're laughing. We barely killed that dude. Cecil, his 400 million damage mattered. It really did matter, I promise you. I've had so many attempts where I stuck the boss at like 2% until I decided to gear up Cecil and etc., and that pushed us over. There we go. I'll have a turn chart in the comments if you want to copy it turn by turn. The whole turns are literally mapped out point for point, no RNG. All the LB fill is covered, etc. So there is the D500 against Kilma, Tonto, and Omega. All missions, one run. Challenging, satisfying to win, but it was frustrating not having Vaughn. And not having Vaughn meant I had to rely on a friend Vaughn, meaning I had to bring all the DPS myself with my big boy EX1 Rain, which had no, he doesn't have as good amplify. Anyway, we got it done. See you next time.